Hey, what's up, guys? Brian Barrera here, CEO of LC Innovation. You guys know I love sports. I love talking about business. Today, it's fight night. It's the fight we've all been waiting for, Canelo Alvarez versus Terence Bud Crawford. So excited about tonight, and I can't wait to talk to you guys about what my projection is going to be, what my pick's going to be. Yeah, man, it's just a lot of cool stuff to talk about. Don't look at the screen just yet. Well, if you have to, you have to. But just listen to me for a second before we jump into that screen. But yeah, so excited to talk about tonight. I'm picking Canelo Alvarez tonight to win. I'm picking him to win by TKO in the 10th round. Um, I have been at odds with my fandom of Canelo Alvarez in the last couple years. I think Canelo was making one of the best careers ever in boxing, just like Mayweather. Mayweather, towards the end of his career, I believe that he wasn't fighting the best fighters, but you can't knock what he's done. Greatest defense of all time in my eyes. Manny Pac-Man Pacquiao. Um, Man, the fighters that he fought, he would fight anybody, and that's why I believe he had so many losses was because he would fight anybody and everyone. Canelo was going down that path, but I feel like now, in his mid to late 30s, his mid 30s, he's starting to go kind of where Mayweather was going and just picking and choosing his fighters carefully and making some money, which is my opinion. But yeah, it's so I've been kind of at odds with how much of Canelo is, if he's still my favorite fighter, because if he is choosing that route to just collect the payday, that wasn't how he's been his whole career. His whole career, he's always fought the best. He's fought people that were like, whoa, how, why is he fighting that person? Why is he fighting at such a high weight class? And the type of fighters that he's fighting. In my opinion, I'm hoping this is what's going on. I'm hoping that him losing to Bivol really made him think, you know what, I need to get some tune-up fights going. I need to really figure out what's going on, and then I need to go after Bivol and the other Russian fighter. I forgot his name for the moment that he's been fighting, and then also too David Benavides, right? So I hope that's what Canelo's been doing. I hope that Terence Bud Crawford is a huge payday, but also a tune-up fight for him to finish his career off fighting those great fighters. Um, but yeah, it's that's what I really hope is going on. I'm a huge Bud Crawford guy. I love Bud Crawford, and I'm torn because being a Canelo fan and being a Bud Crawford fan, who do I go for? And then also too, this reminds me of Golovkin and Canelo so much, not because of their styles or their weight class, but just because I was a huge Gennady Golovkin fan, Triple G. My brother Freddie, huge boxing fan, huge Triple G guy, but we're also Canelo guys. And I'm just torn right now because I kind of want Bud Crawford to win because Canelo, what he's been doing, like I said recently, fighting John Ryder and fighting Jaime Munguia and Berlanga and these fighters that I think he's just out of their class. I hope they're tune-up fights, but the way Canelo's been going, it reminds me a lot of Mayweather when he was fighting um, Robert the Ghost Guerrero, Marcos Maidana, even though Maidana, arguably could have won the first fight, but then he got outclassed the second fight, and then also Andre Berto, who's a great fighter. But those they weren't elite fighters like Mayweather was, and now Canelo's doing the same thing, in my opinion. So I'm kind of hoping that Bud Crawford can win if that's the case with Canelo, but I don't think he's going to win. And let me explain why. I love tie-in business to boxing. You guys know that. I'll go into business at the end, but I want to keep my boxing junkies, my combat sports junkies going. I want them to see what I'm talking about. I think that Bud Crawford's moving up a little too fast. I think he should have taken some tune-up fights in order to understand his body when he's going to fight Canelo. And let me explain why. If you look at some of these fighters, Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao, De La Hoya, Martinez, my favorite fighter of all time, my two favorite fighters of all time, number one is Marco Antonio Barrera. I love Barrera. He has my last name, Tocayo. But also I love Bernard Hopkins. I love B-Hop. People are like, how do you love B-Hop? He's so different than these other. B-Hop was a chameleon, man. That guy would just the fighters that he fought, just like the other people that I mentioned, he fought everyone. He moved up weight classes to fight everyone. But now I'm looking at him and he really didn't move up that much, 160 to 175. But the people that he fought, man, Kelly Pavlik, when he was on top, when he had just beaten Jermaine Taylor, he fought Antonio Tarver. He whooped Antonio Tarver, and I thought that Antonio Tarver was a monster, especially after he beat Roy Jones, the way he beat Roy Jones. He fought James Toney. He fought De La Hoya, knocked him out with a body shot. He knocked out Tito Trinidad, or I think they went the distance. And then he goes at the end of his career, late 40s, 50s. He's fighting Jean Pascal twice. He's fighting, all these incredible fighters. And I'm like, dude, like, what is this guy doing? Winky. And he fought fighters that no one else wants to fight. That's the key, when you fight fighters that no one else wants to fight. And that's why I like Canelo so much. No one wanted to fight Kirkland. Nobody wanted to fight Austin Trout. Nobody wanted to fight Golovkin. Nobody wanted to fight the guys that Canelo was fighting. These very tricky fighters that beat you with points, but also have a little bit of power. And these English fighters, he dominated. Like, just the stuff that Canelo did and the way he's fighting now, the fighters he's been fighting, I hope they're tune-up fights. But again, if you look at these fighters, the way they moved up, but here's why I think Bud Crawford's going to lose, is because these fighters did two things when they moved up. Either they went up for a calculated risk. They knew that the interim champion, or the champion who just won, had beaten a fallen star or became interim champion. They picked and choose their fighters when they were moving up in weight, or they went after a payday. And that's what I think Bud Crawford's doing. I think he's going after a payday. I think that if he would take his time and fight a few times at that upper weight class, I think that he would definitely benefit from that, and hopefully he could beat Canelo in about a year or two. I think he can, but not the way it's going down right now. And let me explain why. Mayweather, look at Mayweather. He went up 24 pounds in his career, right? He was very calculated on who he fought. He moved up when it was a calculated fight, when the fighter was a little bit out of his prime, or he knew that his defense was too much for that fighter and he was going to annihilate him. Mayweather beat some crazy dudes in his heyday. Look at Manny Pacquiao, Margarito, Baldomir, or I think Mayweather beat Baldomir. The people that Pacquiao beat, he just went after everybody. And I think that's why he had so many losses, because he went after everybody. He just went crazy. De La Hoya was a little more calculated in the beginning, but when he started moving up, I think he moved up way too much when he fought Bernard Hopkins, and he lost with a body shot. That was just too much out of his weight class. And then you got Sergio Martinez, the people that Sergio fought. Hopkins already said that when at the end of his career, when he was light heavyweight and cruiserweight and all that stuff, Hopkins was fighting some top tier fighters in their divisions. When he was in a lower weight class, he was fighting Jermaine Taylor, and then he has Kelly Pavlik. Then he started moving up, fought Winky Wright, Jean Pascal. Just so many fights that he had. Chad Dawson, even though he lost to Chad Dawson, but you just look at Hopkins, man, what he did. He fought some really tough people. Roy Jones is a perfect example of what I think is going to happen. Of the reason why I'm predicting what's going to happen. When Roy Jones moved up to heavyweight, it was to fight John Ruiz. And I remember that fight. I was watching it with my brother, and I remember thinking, like, man, he's going to get him. I don't remember if Ruiz was a interim champion, or if he just beat somebody who was out of their prime or whatever. But I just remember Roy Jones just completely outclassing him. He kept holding him, throwing combinations, but throwing counter punches left and right, and then just holding him, and just incredible strategy that he had when he beat Ruiz. You look at Usyk, man, he's moved up from cruiserweight to fighting these incredible heavyweights. I don't think he was that calculated, but I do think he knew it's time for me to move up. It's time for me to challenge myself and fight these guys. And then you got Canelo, man. I mean, just going from 154 to 175, the type of fighters that he's fought, man, is just crazy. I think he did pick and choose Kovalev, who was coming out of his prime. I think that he did fight Cotto a little out of his prime. He also picked and choose fighters to fight that were, a little bit out of their prime, but he picked the perfect time. But yeah, that's why I think Terence Crawford is going to lose today, because I think that he should be taking a couple tune-up fights before he fights Canelo. But he wants that payday. Canelo wants that payday. I think Canelo is just going to be too big. And I think the main thing is, and I'm going to start shifting more to business here, it's all about scaling. It's scaling the opportunity. All these fighters that I've mentioned, there's a lot more of them, but there's Eric Terrible Morales, there's all these other fighters, but these ones right here, James Toney should be on this list, but they picked and choose when to move up. It was either a calculated risk, or it was just for the payday. Calculated risk, again, an interim champion, a champion who beat, I'm not going to say nobody, but a champion who beat a nobody who shouldn't have been champion. I don't believe in that. If you've been a world champion, you're obviously gifted. But that's what I see happening. I see Bud Crawford moving up a little bit too fast. And even though he's having a great camp, the guy looks extremely ripped. I just think that he's not going to know his body in the ring. It's like Mike Tyson always says, everyone has a game plan till they get punched in the mouth. That's what I think is going to happen tonight. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's a great fight. I even hope that maybe Terence Crawford wins because I love Bud Crawford. I love his style, the way he knocks people out. He's just such a great fighter. Humble dude. He seems like a very humble dude. But yeah, I think he's not going to know his body. I think he's not going to know his body. He might get dehydrated. He might lose his power. He might have power in the beginning, but if he punches with volume, if he sees windows, he might tire himself out too fast. I just don't think he knows his body enough jumping up. I think Canelo knows his body extremely well. I think he likes that weight class. I think he likes 168 to 175. I hope that Canelo is using this as a tune-up fight to get into back fighting the Bivol and Benavides. And I'm sorry, I forgot the other Russian guy's name that he's been fighting. Oh, Beterbiev. Sorry, Artur Beterbiev, Dmitry Bivol, David Benavides. I hope that it's a tune-up fight to get with those guys and finish his career fighting the best like he's always done. But yeah, I'm taking Canelo Alvarez today, TKO in the 10th round. I think that Bud Crawford's going to tear him up the first 5, 6 rounds. I think he's going to carve him up nice. And then around 6, 7, and 8, I think Canelo his punches are going to start weighing on Crawford. I think Crawford's going to get a little tired, or he's just not going to feel that kind of power at that weight class. And then around 9 and 10, I think Canelo's really going to take over and the ref's going to stop the fight. That's my projection. That's what I think is going to happen tonight. Now, I always finish it with business. How does this relate to business? Well, this reminds me of Porter's 5 Forces. This is Porter's 5 Forces. This is when you're scaling an industry, a product, a customer, whatever the case, you always have to scale your business. It reminds me of Porter's 5 Forces of when you're understanding your competition, of what you're understanding what industry you're jumping into or expanding in that industry. You have to understand your external forces, what's going on outside, what's going on inside, how are your customers acting, how are your competitors acting, does your product have a life cycle, does it have an actual future, or is it only going to be good and hot for a couple years and it's going to fizzle out where you have other new products emerging. But this is Porter's 5 Forces. Threat of new entrants. Can you lose market share? Can you lose some of your sales revenue to some new entrants, to some new companies, to some new businesses, to some new restaurants, to some new manufacturers? Are they bringing in something new that you don't have? And how easy is it for them to penetrate what you're doing? If you're a medical device company, you need validations. You need not for human use samples, for human use samples. You need all that stuff. Can they do that? Because if they can't, then you're going to have a good leverage, a competitive leverage above them. Bargaining power of buyers. Do your customers, do your buyers, do they have power over you, right? You have to take in all the factors of customers, their portfolios, what kind of customers are buying from you, what is their reactions, what is their attitudes, what is their activity, right? How are your customers acting? How are your buyers acting? Then the threat of substitutes. Can someone replace you? Again, medical devices. Can somebody replace you? Can China replace United States product? They can't because of the validations, the ISO, International Standardization Organization requirements, all that stuff. Patent infringement. Can they replace your product? Can your competitor in the United States replace your product? What can your potential substitutes do to kind of take over your product? Is it a long cycle? Is it a quick cycle? And then the bargaining power of suppliers, your suppliers, the people that give you the materials, the people that are giving you the food, they give you the plastic, they give you all the stuff that you need to make your product. Can they potentially take your business? Can they jump into your business? If they're a supplier and you're the manufacturer, can they then become that manufacturer? Is it easy? Can they scale it? Are they going to lose money if they do that? Because I guarantee you a lot of suppliers try doing that and they're like, nope, we got to stick to our lane. If they're $1 billion company or a multi-million dollar company, they lose some money and they're like, nope, we're going to go back here before we lose more. And the last one is the rivalry, the actual rivalry. Can you talk bad about your competitors? Can you go after them? Are you at the top where you have to act like you're McDonald's and you got to not pay attention to your competitors because you know you're way above them? They're Burger King, they're Carl's Jr., they're bakers, they have their niche market, and you're at the top. You have to really show the class at the top, right? You're in a class of your own. Is that what you are? Or are you down here where you're trying to move up to that level? And this reminded me of Bud Crawford on what he's doing, and also the other great fighters that have moved up. Did they actually scale? This is another one of Michael Porter. This is from his book, also from it's not called Five Forces. I'll put it in the comments on what the book's called. I forgot what it's called for some reason because I'm so focused on the Five Forces. But it's economies of scales and economies of scope. Reach out to me if you want to talk about this a little bit more. But it's really understanding, in this case with Bud Crawford, it's understanding what you're moving into. You're moving into another world, in the business world, we'll call it an industry. You're moving into another industry, you're moving into another weight class. How are you going to respond? What are your strengths?